We're drowning in data, right? Our dashboards are great at telling us what's happening. Clicks are down, sales are flat, engagement is just dropping. But they almost never tell you the one thing you really need to know: why? And that's exactly the question we're going to get into today.
Okay, so picture this. You've just launched a new product. You've poured months, maybe even years of your life into this thing. And then the launch numbers come back. And they're not just bad. They're a total dead end. The data is crystal clear. You failed. But it gives you absolutely zero clues as to why.
And that right there, that's the gap, isn't it? The one we all face. You know something is broken, but you have no idea how to fix it. Well, today, we're going to bridge that gap. We're going to figure out exactly how to find the answer to that all-important question, why?
So, you're stuck, right? Just staring at a spreadsheet and the numbers are a total mess. Where do you even start?
Well, you know, when you're lost in the woods, you don't just start running in a random direction, do you? No. You stop, you get your bearings, and you start to explore. And that's our very first step.
So it turns out pretty much every research journey starts with a big choice. Are you exploring to figure out what the problem even is? Or are you trying to measure something you already have a hunch about? With our failed product, well, we don't have a theory. We're totally in the dark. So for us, we've got to start right here with exploratory research.
This is exactly where we need to begin. You see, exploratory research is made for these fuzzy, ambiguous situations. It's not about getting a simple yes or no. It's about digging for those first glimmers of insight when you honestly don't even know the right questions to ask yet. Think of it like drawing the first lines on a map of an undiscovered country.
And look, this isn't just aimless wandering. It has some very specific goals. First, you're trying to nail down the real problem. I mean, is it the price, the marketing, the product itself? Who knows? Second, this process helps you form an educated guess, what we call a hypothesis. And third, it builds a solid foundation for all the heavy-duty structured research that's got to come next.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we explore? Well, we need a special kind of toolkit, one that's designed to dig into the human side of the data. You know, all the thoughts, feelings, and experiences that never ever show up on a dashboard.
This whole process of getting the full story has a name. It's called qualitative research. And it's pretty simple, really. Instead of counting things, you're interpreting them. The whole point is to get a deep, rich, meaningful understanding of why people do the things they do.
To do this right, you kind of have to adopt a qualitative mindset. That means, first off, you have to be flexible. You might learn something halfway through that completely changes your direction, and that's okay. It also means you got to get out into the real world, not a lab, because context is everything. It's really about embracing the messy, complicated reality of being human, so you can build a complete picture of what's going on.
So what are the tools? Well, one of the classics is the focus group. I'm sure you've heard of it. You just bring a small group of people together for a guided chat. And the real magic here is the group dynamic itself. When you hear people bouncing ideas and frustrations off each other, you can uncover these shared feelings that you would never find on your own.
But hey, sometimes a group setting isn't what you need. Sometimes you need to go really deep with just one person. And for that, you have the in-depth interview. It's just what it sounds like, a one-on-one conversation where you can really explore an individual's personal story, their unique motivations, and all the little details of their experience.
All right, this brings us to the big one, the classic showdown, qualitative versus quantitative. But here's the thing, don't think of it as a battle, like they're rivals. It's much, much more of a partnership, a really powerful one. Here's a great way to think about it. Qualitative research, that's your detective. It's on the street, asking why and how to piece together the story, the motive. And quantitative research, that's your statistician. It's back at the office, asking what and how many to measure the patterns across the entire city. And let's be real, to solve the case, you absolutely need both of them. And if you look at their toolkits, you can see just how different they are. The whole purpose of qualitative is to discover new ideas. You do that by observing, by interpreting stories, usually from a pretty small group of people. The purpose of quantitative, on the other hand, is to test those ideas. You do that by measuring structured data from really large samples. They're just fundamentally different, from their purpose all the way down to the process. So you see, they're not rivals at all. They're partners. It's that simple. And why? Because each one answers questions the other one literally can't. You need the detective to find the story in the first place, and then you need the statistician to prove how widespread that story really is. Okay, let's bring this all back home. Let's go back to our failed product launch from the beginning,
because this is where the real power of this partnership is going to become crystal clear. Qualitative research uses something called inductive reasoning. Don't worry about the fancy term. It's a simple idea. It just means you start small, with specific real-world observations, like from a few of those in-depth interviews we talked about. And from those individual stories, you build up to a bigger general theory. You're going from the specific to the general.
And then quantitative research takes the baton. It uses the opposite approach, called deductive reasoning. It starts with that big theory you just came up with, and it tests it against large-scale data to see if it's actually true, to prove it or disprove it. See? It's this beautiful logical cycle. So let's solve our mystery. We already knew what happened, right? The sales were terrible. But now, after doing a few qualitative interviews, a theme starts to emerge. You hear people say things like, I couldn't even figure out how to open the box, or I looked at the label and had no idea what the product was for. And just like that, you have your why. The packaging is confusing. That's your theory, born from real stories from real people.
And that is the single biggest takeaway here. If you remember one thing, remember this. First, you explore to build the story. Then, you measure to prove it. You start with the qualitative why to find the human story. Then you use the quantitative what to prove that story is true at scale.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. Look at the data in your own work, or even just your own life. Beyond all the numbers, beyond the what, what's the one crucial why question that's been bugging you? The one you haven't been able to answer yet? Maybe it's time to stop counting and start exploring.